As usual, we have another awesome interview for you guys today. It's Lindsay Moran. She's a former CIA operative. So my main question is always like, is it anything like in the movies where they're so smart and they got all the satellite images and they're tracking everything and they know everything?
That's far from the case. And certainly when I joined the agency, I had this idea of it as this kind of mythical, omnipotent organization, as many Americans and as many people throughout the world do. And then you get there and it's a big bureaucracy and it's made up of human beings, and some of them are really bright and some of them are really motivated, but some of them are asleep under their desks. The CIA, I think its mandate is basically to protect American interests. It's kind of evolved into, and it's presented to Americans now as we're protecting you, but really it's about protecting American interests. Stealing secrets, finding out information that the US government doesn't have access to through normal diplomatic channels. And that can be, yes, it can be used to protect Americans, to prevent terrorist attacks, but it also can be used to protect our economic interests.
Back in the day, I assumed there were real spies, like inside the Soviet Union, inside Russia, and they did dangerous work and they infiltrated. I'm guessing here, so tell me if I'm wrong. But these days, I'm not convinced we've infiltrated Al-Qaeda with an agent or an operative at all.
I'm quite sure we haven't. It's close to impossible, and really recently, in the past decade specifically, we've really shifted away from that emphasis of trying to recruit insiders and trying to recruit spies. I mean, we spent, in the aftermath of September 11th, we changed our strategy so much and spent resources on gathering so-called intelligence in a way that's completely at odds with American ideals, which was, creating Guantanamo, torturing people. And I'm the first to admit that the CIA is not a place for any kind of moral or ethical purist. You're operating in gray areas. During the Cold War, the kind of spy versus spy game between us and the Russians, I really think they had us beat at the end of the day. I think the KGB was a more sophisticated service. Their language capabilities were a lot better. Americans, the kind of Americans that the CIA attracts, there's very few of them that actually have language capabilities to the point that they could pose as a native. Now, we certainly did have many sources, Soviet sources, deep within the Soviet government, and high-level sources. There was kind of like a mutual respect almost between us and the KGB. Not to say that, that we weren't surveilling each other and spying on each other, and we still do. But a friend of mine who served in Moscow, a former colleague of mine, he has this great story. In Moscow, you're followed all the time by, at that time, the KGB, and now the SVR, the FSB. And there's surveillance on you all the time. So there's very little you can do operationally if you're serving in a place like Moscow. And he'd been living there for a number of years. They adopted a dog while they were there, and they had to take the dog and have it put down. And as he left the vet's office after having had the dog put down, he walked out, and one of his surveillance, one of these KGB guys surveilling him, came up and put his arm around him and said, I'm really sorry, I feel really bad. I was with you when you got that dog.
Yeah, that's awesome. See, that's old school. Yeah. That's nice. You left in 2003, right? So why did you leave?
So every day I was reading in the Washington Post and hearing the members of the administration say that Saddam Hussein was a direct threat, that he had weapons of mass destruction, that he was linked with Al-Qaeda. And then I would go into work at the CIA, where I was working with people who this was their area of expertise. And to a person, they said, we have no evidence of WMD. There's no link between Iraq and Al-Qaeda. And this was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back for me in terms of disillusionment with the agency. And I wasn't there for a particular conversation, but it was reported to me by a colleague who worked in the counterproliferation division, that a manager gathered his group together of about 20 to 30 CIA people and said, look, let's face it, the president wants to go to war, and our job is to give him a reason to do so. And this was kind of shocking to me, because that's not the job of the CIA, or certainly not the job of the CIA as I saw it, or that's not what I signed up for. I wanted to serve my country, and I became aware that I was not serving my country, I was serving this organization. And the organization was not serving the country, it was serving the wishes at that time of the administration.